to comment, Prasadji?
Yeah, I think we need a lot of synthesis. Out of all the comments or opinions what we had in this platform, all are really relevant in different perspectives, and we need some sort of a point of coherence or some synthesis on all the, because ultimately, see, we have to put them for the larger cause of the entire health of humankind and on the nature. So I think we have to be more accommodative. We have, again, I would like to come to the point of bringing in better dialogues. So we should have practical plans, especially what Bhaswati ji told about the learning process in Ayurveda. That is a great tragedy. You see, how can you say, how can you learn basic principles and Kriya Shariram as a separate subjects? What is the difference between Kriya Shariram and basic principles? I have never ever understood it. And how can you separate Kriya Shariram and Rajana Shariram? And how can you say that Rajana Shariram is the primitive anatomy that the Indian people were known in the early years? Actually, the Shariram, what is mentioned in the classics, is the bridge between Sutrasthanam and Nidanasthanam. What you need to learn Nidanasthanam is an understanding of the Shariram, which is explained in the same textbook, without which you cannot move forward. But in academies, it is told that this is the primitive knowledge of anatomy that the Indians had. See how sad the things are. That is the way in which in the formative years itself a student is taught. So we have to put our own houses in order first. Then we should have dialogues. We should have validation, understanding beyond the geographical boundaries, because ultimately all these knowledge systems and traditions are for the larger good of mankind and nature.
Yes. And we need people like you to write papers showing why it is that these different perspectives are a nuisance. Dr. Kishor, could you speak to that? Where would we find people to write such papers that would talk about the need to reintegrate what has been separated artificially?
Yeah, we need people, and we do have a few people, but the problem is that few people who are excellent, they are overburdened with too many tasks. So it is difficult to expect everything from one person or two persons. So anyhow, coming to this question, say Rachana Sharira and Kriya Sharira, ideally in Ayurveda, they have been incorporated into what is known as Sharira, right? So even for example, Agni is described in Charaka Chikitsa Sthana 15th chapter under Grahani. The physiology of Agni is described there. So there was a vertical integration and there was a horizontal integration throughout in Ayurvedic textbooks. And currently the competence-based education is picking up the same thing. And now we are realizing this is an unfortunate thing. And we need to have this integration horizontal, like Rachana and Kriya. They should be taught together and they should not be separate, totally projected as two separate entities. Without Rachana, Kriya cannot be there, and without Kriya, Rachana cannot be taught. So this is horizontal in integration, and without this Chikitsa, Kriya cannot be taught. Without Kriya, Chikitsa cannot be taught. So this is vertical integration. So this kind of integration is evident in our textbooks. Somehow we have split them apart to follow the structure of the MCI-based MBBS curriculum, and now they are coming back to competence-based curriculum, and we want once again this competency-based curriculum to be implemented. So this is how the things are happening, and unfortunate things are happening, of course.
And we need to change it. So we're going to look to people like you to sit on committees and find ways that we can actually change these back to a competency-based curriculum, right? Madan, did you want to say something?
Yes, thank you, Bhaswati. I want to bring Cynthia into this discussion. I don't know if people on the panel and people who are here with us appreciate that Latvia has a translation of a large part of Ashtanga Hridaya, translated from Sanskrit into Latvian. And I just want to hear from Cynthia, number one, whether I've presented what has been achieved in Latvia correctly. Number two, whether you are appreciating the difficulties of translating the spirit. Not only here in India, you can see the confusion that we have when we go into deep concepts. How is accommodated in the translations that you have, the Latvian translation of Ashtanga Hridaya, the section, I don't know, I think it's the, you can tell us a little more. And how we are going to accommodate this, the need, because this need is here in India too, which you rightly know, and you know well. From there, we got to build a consensus and then take it out to people who are in other parts of the world from different systems of philosophy and language and culture. Please, Cynthia, please do comment.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to appreciate the just last words of Dr. Kishor Patwardhan. I completely agree also with Dr. Prasadaji. I don't want to repeat myself, but that issues which were just brought up about how much can be lost in translation and misunderstood and misinterpreted in translation. I think that is the greatest challenge and greatest responsibility of those who translate, to actually, it's not about literary art, it's about actually understanding the science as well. It's about understanding Ayurveda and the concepts of Ayurveda, because if we would take, let's say, some old translations which are like of Sushruta or Charaka, there are quite a few translations into English, and we could hardly use those. I mean, we used them in our dictionary as a quotations, but then we gave our own explanation, and for each and every word, also in our dictionary and also in Ashtanga, for each section, I went separately to specialists in that area, in our Ayurveda college, AVP college in Coimbatore, or with different doctors, specialists. We went through every sentence. Actually, we went through every sentence and we deeply discussed. I retranslated them back from Latvian into English, and we discussed over if to retranslate it, if actually we have understood same concept, which was originally meant in original text and in original context. So yes, and if it's lost, then the problem with Western scientists, Western researchers who will read it, will be those things which were mentioned, that many, not only misunderstanding, but also primitive understanding. That is like there was a whole discussion about primitive anatomy. A lot of things will be understood in a primitive, or another thing which is completely okay, which Western doctors agree on Ayurveda, let it be historic. Let it be in a historic context. Let it be like 5,000 years old. That's I mean, okay, 5,000, not really. Let it be 2,000 years old. That's good enough. Let it be, you know, using leeches and all that. Let it be just old historic stuff. But what does it have to do with contemporary science? What does it have to do with modern day? So to put it in a context, how it is modern, that is a great challenge, great challenge. So that is regarding translation, which I wanted to mention. And just 2 words about research, which there was a lot of talk about research. I also read in chat and in questions and answers, there was some talk brought up regarding research. And what I wanted to point out is that we do have some small experience regarding cooperation with Ayurvedic, very experienced Ayurvedic Vaidyas and our Western colleagues who are very cooperative. So few points which I want to mention are that we do need research. I still insist on it that we do, but we cannot use the same research criteria or the same, let's say, methodologies which we use in Western medicine. First of all, we can't use same diagnosis. So point number 1 is that for successful research, we need to have a team. a team of people who are nicely cooperating from allopathic community and from Ayurvedic community who deeply know Ayurveda. Then when we subgroup patients, what we have understood by now is that it's important to subgroup them not according to, let's say we take a wider Western diagnosis like type 2 diabetes, but when we go into subgrouping, we should use mainly Ayurvedic concepts, not just HbA1c or blood sugar, but we should go by Prakriti, by Vikriti, by some deeper Ayurvedic concepts. And if we subgroup them in that way and give a specific medicine to specific subgroup, then we can actually expect some real results. Because we were offered to do research by one magic pill or things like that, which we refused, in fact, because that totally goes against the deep concepts of Ayurveda. In fact, there are already published research papers, and we are hoping to go on in that area as well, that we give even to each patient. Vaidya can pick a different medical combination, or to each subgroup can give one type of combination. And we do not just analyze efficacy of a specific drug, but we analyze efficacy of a method. We analyze that adding on, let's say, Ayurveda to existing allopathic medicine, or just doing, we analyze the efficacy of method, and such publications do exist. There are already such research papers, and so that is one aspect. And there are many other aspects which we can analyze. Like there are questionnaires of quality of life of a patient afterwards. There are all kinds of inflammatory markers. There are many other markers except of blood sugar, for example, in type 2 diabetes, which we would get excellent results. And in fact, we have done some pilot studies and we are getting excellent results. Some three problems I want to point out very quickly are that washout period for Ayurvedic medicine is a lot longer than for Western medicine. That has to be considered in research. If people have been using Ayurvedic medicine before, one needs to wait sometimes for 2 months to actually include them in them. That is one aspect. Another aspect is difficulty of making placebo, because no matter how hard you try, it will have some effect on a body if you make Ayurvedic placebo. And I don't mean a white pill. I mean like some kashayam or something that looks like Ayurvedic medicine, but doesn't have that effect. So there is a great challenge in making placebo similar to actual medicine. And a third last point is that there has to be a research. And if we can, as a community, we can more work on also requesting Ayush to help us, Ayush Ministry to help us with research abroad. Because in allopathic community in Europe, there are a lot of objections, both from doctors and from some patients. Okay, there is evidence, fair enough. In PubMed, in so many, there is evidence Ayurveda works, but it works just in India because phenotypically people are different, climate is different. So that is why it is very, very important to do some research also in the West, to prove that actually same principles are global, same principles work everywhere. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Cynthia. I don't know if any of our panelists wants to comment on this before. Maybe Srivatsji, maybe you want to share a few
Leah
thoughts.
wanted to say something. She unmuted her mic.
Oh, Leah wanted to say something. Leah,
yes.
I'll just make a brief comment. Again, I'm just enjoying this discussion so much. But I was involved with some of the initial research of yoga and Ayurveda that was done in this country. And I just loved what you said, Dr. Cynthia, that we have to find a way to research methodology and not just for a specific result, because that was exactly the issue with quote unquote yoga research. Sometimes the specific yoga was not even mentioned in the original research papers. It was just dropped in as yoga, unidentified. And so on such a gross or base level as to have, no purpose whatsoever in the research paper. And so that shift into looking at how to research a methodology, I think that's where we need to go. And again, that really changes the paradigm, because we've been so stuffed into this Western view that we should research just a drug or a thing and see its effect with no context around it. So it's just a tremendous challenge to get out of that. But I like how you're starting to frame it. I think we can do it.
Thank you, Leah. That's an excellent comment. There's another person here with us today who knows a lot about the wider view of things coming from the mental health perspective, and that's Dr. Mala Kapadia. I'm wondering, Dr. Mala, if you would like to make some comments on what Dr. Syntheja or what Leah or some of the others have said about how to do research and how to make it more widely applicable.
Thank you so much, Bhaswati. First of all, let me congratulate Ayush Vele and everyone who's here. This is such amazing deliberations, right? I mean, we are actually looking at the real problems, being very honest, I would say brutally honest, right? And this is the perfect time because in the pandemic times, I think when all the sickness care medical pathis have failed, then yoga and Ayurveda are the only hope for humanity. And just today morning, I was listening to another webinar where they were discussing the psychosomatic and mainly the emotional traumas on people because of the pandemic. And they were also discussing the neuroscience. And I was wondering, I said, oh my God, but why is not Ayurveda talking about this, right? I mean, we have so much in-depth knowledge of mental health. I mean, not from sickness point of view, not from pathology point of view, but actually the sattva, the basic real health point of view, right? And also in Vimanasthana, the Janapados Dvamsa chapter, there is so much about bringing back dharma. I mean, HR all over the world and corporates is talking about the new normal. The Ayurveda has already given us what should have been our normal, but at least now collectively, let's go back to our own Swadharma, revive all the Ayurvedic principles that we have not been practicing at global level, at individual level, at institutional level, and let's deliberate also on that. Because unless we really revive, as you all have been discussing, the basics, right? The right direction, we all are on the right direction. So all we need to do is have faith in Ayurveda, have faith in yoga, and go ahead with the journey. I think this is the perfect time when the universe is connecting all the right dots. And we all are coming together. And Syntheja, I'm here in Coimbatore with the AVP group of Krishna Kumarji, and I've been working with him closely on some research. I live at Vaidya, started by Dr. Ram Kumar. So glad to meet all of you here.
Thank you, Dr. Mala. One of the things that you're pointing out is that we actually have the answer among us. The problem sometimes is that we have these discussions which are actually serial presentations of people presenting their slides, and there's no actual interaction. And that is what we're trying to do at this particular forum, so that we can toss things around back and forth between us, be honest, and actually have active, live, what is real brainstorming, right? Something that none of us could come up individually, that comes to our minds collectively because we are contributing into the cauldron, into the crucible of thought where the Agni is very present. So what I'm getting from this discussion that we've been having for the last 2 hours is that we actually have solutions among us. We don't have to wait for someone should do it, or those of us who have the ability are overwhelmed and have too much to do, and so we can't assign it to anyone else. It just has to be us sitting on the committees. We can't allow anyone else. There has to be an entire collective of people who contribute these thoughts together and create something like a white paper or a discussion paper, which is what Dr. Madan and I have decided should be the output from this discussion. So we are taking all the comments, all the chat and questions and deliberations that have come forth, and we are going to put together something that is deliverable to a larger body of people to say, this is what a large group of people can come up with. How do we now take these proposed solutions and enact them into things like the national education policy or the new curriculum that the new avatar of CCIM, whatever that's going to be, is going to come up with. Madan, do you want to say a few words to end so that we can bring this to a close?
Thank you, Baswati. I think we've covered a lot of ground, and it's been a very, very deep discussion. I'm so happy that we brought people not just from the generic surface, but we, as Srivatji says, we have gone all the way down with the deepest roots down to the point where we are questioning whether we are thinking about the science correctly, whether in India we are taking the correct approach to understanding these systems. Number two, I feel we reached a point where there is enough brain power here in small groups like this to highlight those changes. And all of you are people with immense experience. Leah lives in America, but she's seen India. She studied yoga in India. Cynthia lives in Latvia. They have worked on Ashtanga there. They've done the translations. They've spent so much time trying to understand and trying to convey this to people. Baswati continues to live in the two worlds, understand the two systems of thinking. And we have senior educationists here, Srivatji, who has many, many years of experience working on the deepest principles and in so-called specialized areas like Marma and Marma Chikitsa, and understanding the all-important concept of prana. And Prasadji, who works on the space, teaches students, inspires students in why we must take a very passionate approach to, if you want to be in Ayurveda, that you have to be passionate, you've got to study every day, you've got to think hard, and also runs his own practice on treating children with autism. And we have Kishor, who is leading the Vaidya scientist program at Bangalore. So effectively, as Baswati says, we have enough brain power here, even in this small group and among the contributors who've been firing comments and questions to drive very quickly at distilling our thoughts and arriving at a very strongly worded white paper. And initially, maybe just a few points that we can circulate amongst ourselves and get some feedback. It's just like a request for comments document that can be shared among all of ourselves. And all this, clearly, the entire program is recorded for all of us to revisit and listen to what we said or what we wanted to say and what we couldn't complete. We can expand on those ideas. Also, the chats will be preserved and we can revisit that and put together. And we have energetic, yet senior people like Kishorji, who's the head of department at BHU and this established institution. We will have in future programs, we will bring together people from the National Institute of Ayurveda, people who are involved in the new education policy. We are in discussion with all these people. It's just a case of finding time enough in our calendar to bring them in at the right time. So what we've achieved here in our two Freedom for Ayurveda discussions, I feel is extremely rich to shape a new benchmark for where the next level of discussion should go. And we've brought together minds who've crystallized here in this less than 120 minutes, we've crystallized some very, very important advances for where we draw the next baseline and what we should say must be the minimum for where things must progress. Mala, I'm happy that Mala Kapadia is here with us. She comes from the School for Public Administration at the university and the organization called Rashtram. And Malaji is very central to developing these kind of interactions, enabling dialogues with policymakers. And I think we are fortunate that everybody has come to this discussion and come to this event with the kind of passion that Prasadji expects all students to have. So I want to share quick comments from Prasadji and Srivatsji. It is very, very difficult to get these people ever together at one time. And Cynthia and Kishore, it's very, very difficult to bring you all together, but thank you all for coming to this event. Thank you all for sitting here with us and sharing your thoughts. And a quick round, Baswati, if you want to pass the thing over to everybody. But from my side, I think from what you have offered, we have a lot of beautiful seeds that can now be put together into a lovely document. I have made my first attempt in the 2 slides that I shared with everybody. I will send this out to all the people registered for this event and get feedback from there. So many questions here from so many people. We are not, Baswati, if you wanted to take some of those, that would be very nice. Time permitting, I don't know if...
I just want to do a check-in with Benny and see how many more minutes we can speak, because I know that we, I know that we are...
Shall I just continue on, or is Benny going to come?
I think Benny needs to tell us whether or not we can continue for a few more minutes, because we don't want to overstay our welcome. Benny, is it okay if we go on for a few more minutes?
Yes, please.
Ah, great.
Benny, we won't keep you long, just a few more minutes, because then we'll bring...
Benny likes a good discussion. See, the thing that happens is when you go to a seminar and the person has a drone voice and you feel like you're going to fall asleep, it's a painful seminar and everyone wants to end. But nobody has the problem watching a reality show for 3 hours on the television. And when we have an engaged discussion, it's really in the heart of everyone that's here. We all want to see Ayurveda grow. So there was a question that I want to bring up. There's actually a series of comments about the Wikipedia entry on Ayurveda. And I would say that 5 years ago, there were a group of us who did try to change it. I am a wiki editor. And I went in and did try to change Ayurveda and related entries. There was a session at the WAC, the World Ayurveda Congress in Calcutta, where there was a training. I think Kishor Patwardhan had talked to me about that. I was still in BHU at that time. And we tried to change these entries. Now, one of the challenges that we have in Ayurveda education is that we have this idea that all Indians are doing Ayurveda and all Westerners are not. But we have the Western thinking mind in India in groups who are very against Ayurveda, and we have very pro-Ayurveda people in Europe and Americas who are very, very willing to bring that energetic, holistic point of view of Ayurveda. The question is, how do we bring that into the education so that we are a united front? The thing that I see that makes it very hard to lead the Ayurveda fraternity for anyone is that we have so many different factions of people. Some say we have to do research and we have to do RCTs and we have to find placebos for Ayurveda. Others say we absolutely cannot find placebos for Ayurveda, as Dr. Sintha just said. Some say it is an energy-based science. Some say it is not energy-based and we must reduce it down to biochemical so that we can explain it to the modern medical people who have no vocabulary for that. So if there's anyone that would like to speak to that, please raise your hand and Madan and I will look for your name, and we'd love to hear from some of the students. You can go to the bottom of your screen and see either in the comments or the more or the black bar where it says raise hand, or you can go to the participants bar and ask to raise your hand.
Srivatsji has raised his hand, so please.
Yes, go ahead, sir. Please, go ahead.
Srivatsji, namaskaram.
Srivatsji, did you want to make a comment?
You have to unmute.
We have also Dr. M. Prasad that wants to make a comment, and Dr. Manohar. So Dr. Srivatsji first, and then Manohar, and then, yes, sir, go ahead.
I'm audible.
Yes, yes.
You got a little more time over there.
Now, two questions are being raised, I think. One is the matter of status of Ayurvedic education in India itself. And I saw a comment that, and Prasadji also told that we have to put our houses straight before this thing. But one thing I tell that it's a question of receptivity also. As far as science is concerned, it has no boundaries. It's not like India, it has to be corrected in India first. It can be corrected elsewhere. Like so, there is a India as it is. It's a political entity. It's not a knowledge entity. So many matters which are in the anvil may not come out because of political reasons also, or because of other matters, maybe economical or maybe some other things. So the population's need is different from different countries. In a developing country, people want some method of getting what you call economically independent, and this one. There is no question of whether it is Ayurveda or allopathy or modern medicine or traditional medicine, etc. For them, that is not a matter. So when we are in the field and we are with the objective of achieving the objectives of the Shastra or the science which we are dealing, that is to have a proper life, you should be healthy. And for that we are working. So it's the interest, whoever is interested in that will work for that. It's not a question of nationality. Here I put a chant in between that efforts by very high scholars or scientists like Dr. Vaidya has not been taken very seriously, I think, by the modern medical fraternity. In his epilogue in the Ayurvedic biology, which he released long years back, still that epilogue I remember that he has admitted that after learning from Prasadji's guru and our guru Raghavendra Rumulpadji, he has told that after going or searching in the way of modern medicine or the modern scientific way, still there will be something which cannot be, which is unrevealed, or that is the thing as far as what makes it difficult for Ayurveda being understood by somebody who is not having that perspective. One thing. Second thing is that of research. So of research, what is being told is that, say, it is like in India also, or all over the world, it is like that. If somebody is getting hurt, sorry, I am telling that what I feel the truth is. Like you have a shirt and you don't know my size or this one, I have to wear it and it should fit. Like that, it is the matter. Okay, only double blind study is the golden word, and if it does not suit, and I don't come to the if it is science, that has to be in such a way that it is the methodology is evolved as scientifically as possible. I don't tell that it has to be just empirical. It has to be just accepted as a faith. Faith is something different. Okay, so science is also something which throws the truth. Now, as far as I'm a teacher, I tell my students here everybody is learning from the modern point of view only until they come into this system of learning Ayurveda after the 12th standard or the higher secondary. So I tell that now there is a responsibility for you. I'll give an example, Madanji, that if I am out of my room and when I come back after shopping, I don't have the torch with me. So then I may borrow a torch from the sentinel or the sentry and tell that, please give me the torch. I'll go and open my door. And once I reach the door itself, I know that once I put the key and open it, I know that I have kept my torch in the table over there. Once I get the torch back, I light my torch and then give with a acknowledgement, I give it back to the sentry, the other torch to the sentry. So for learning Ayurveda also sometimes, many a times it is very, very, the text is so obscure, the text is so hidden in such a way, it's totally marma. So when you require to understand that sometimes a modern torch may be needed for that. But once it is used as a tool for understanding, then if you continue using it, then the what you call, you don't find your torch or you don't use your torch at all. Torch means the knowledge base I'm talking about. So if say that is one of the things, because one of the things which has been very clearly or very evidently told by students are that, sir, there is no clinical methodology which has been told in Ayurvedic textbooks at all. They just tell about the fundamentals and then rightly go away to the talk about the pathology and then talk about this one. The methodology of clinical examination is not told, is what generally they complain. I tell that whatever Acharya has told how to examine a dhatu and all is very clearly written in the symptoms, how to test it, how to grade it, how to examine and grade it for your purpose of whether the after your treatment it is coming right or getting lessened. That grading and all, it is a question of common sense, which if you had been with a guru or a good teacher, you would have been observing. And how he is what you call rating that complaint and how he is rating his effect of the treatment, everything will be in that, because Shastra was learnt in that fashion. So now if you have to come out with such books, it is surely possible. It is not an impossible thing based on the Ayurvedic principles. The third one is according to based on the research what we are talking. Only two examples I will give you, just 1 minute. One is that say there was a paper, it was in Malayalam, it was in the Kottakkal seminar book, Prasadji will be knowing that. Say there was a study on the effectivity of Kaidariyadi Kashaya on amoebiasis. The topic was amoebiasis for that discussion. And what Guruji Thirumalpatji had written over there, say there is a methodology for Ayurveda how a drug acts. It is not a drug disease approach at all. It is patient-centric. So in this situation where amoebiasis is there, the modern person will usually, as a scientist, he wants to know that he cultures the amoeba in a petri dish, and then if he puts through the pipette some concentration of Kaidariyadi Kashaya, how much colonies of amoeba is getting destroyed. But that is not the approach of Ayurveda at all. Here when Acharya tells that, he tells that when you give Kaidariyadi Kashaya inside, the flora of the intestines are made into such a way that there is no chance for the amoeba to exist over there. It is not amoebicidal. It gives a this one. So research, when we are talking, the perspective has to be very correct, and only the research also will be properly meaningful. Another is an example of, say, we have less tools to analyze something which we have to, like if I tell that, okay, I studied the fat changes in the Anvantaram Avarti, or the repeated this one of Avarti from the Anvantaram 1 to compared to 7 to 14 to 21 to 41 to 101. If I tell that if you don't know the principle of Agni and converting the material outside similar to the material inside, that dhatu inside, Pradhi Samane Sarvesham. So all the paka which is required for one medicine with the milk to be digested and metabolized to become a Asti dhatu or Gambhira dhatu, or like Asti, Majja, or this one, Snayus, that is done wonderfully by the Acharyas outside. So for which dhatu you want what strength to be given, that has been determined. And now for neurological diseases, that's why when it is coming to such conditions, we prefer Nasya or Pana of Dhanvantaram 101. Now, if you analyze with our tools, whatever it is now, of course, with nanomedicine, there is a lot of changes they tell. But if you analyze it and tell that no, there is no change for the fat at all, it is getting just saturated. There is no, you don't have the methodology or you don't have the mechanics to describe this changes in this formula by repetition in the biological or its biological effect, then it is not the fault of Ayurveda. It is the what you call defect in the perceptibility or the instrument of the through which we are trying to perceive. There only I put that experience is something pratyaksha, because experience is something told by the people who have observed already, and if at all what is required is like Bhushan Patwardhan ji, like you can go back reverse how it happened, and if you are not able to explain something at some point, then search whether it is the methodology is wrong or my approach is wrong, or what improvisation I can make to make it correct, or is there anybody who has try to discover it in another language. I think I should stop here. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your comments. We had two other people that we had called on. One was Manoharji and then M. Prasadji. Manoharji, did you want to make some comment on this?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so just to let you know, after I thought I'm the only one in this world who's been traversing between public health and allopathic medicine, and then I found somebody better than me who also done Ayurvedic medicine, that Dr. Baswati. So a very strong, very fan of Dr. Baswati, that she's building the bridges between allopathic medicine and clinical medicine and Ayurvedic medicine. And I like your discussion today. And that's what I'm saying. I'm allopathic. I have a master in international health from Johns Hopkins. I wrote a health plan for Kenya. I'm a transplant nephrologist. So I've seen immunology, cell biology, mitochondrial, all the drug effects, but I did not feel that I could do a good genuine research in the US, except for the pharmaceutical company doing clinical drug trials. You could not do a double-blind clinical prospective trial without having enough funds, and the funds there are lagging. So we have a lot of resistance to Ayurvedic medicine. Basically, people say in public health, in research, in epidemiology, you need to repeat, you need to standardize, you need to repeat. There should be cause-effect relationship. For example, in diabetes, if you measure hemoglobin A1C, and we know what is the change in A1C. I'm a diabetic, I have myasthenia gravis, and I'm dealing with it firsthand, these things.
Yes, so have you been able to design such a study?
I want to participate and join this group. What can I do? What can we do to remove the Ayurveda from the resistance we are facing? The pharmaceutical industry is against the Ayurveda. The insurance industry is against the Ayurveda. And there are a lot of drugs they analyzed in Ayurvedic medicine, which are high in arsenic and certain other poisons. And I have people speaking in the board review courses by Ayurvedic medicine, which are very nephrotoxic. So try to negate their side effects. We need a representation from your side, from Ayurveda, why is so. So that's what we need to have.
It's not why it's so. It's that it is not so, and we are not showing the studies that delineate why it is not so. So you may know that I gave a talk at the FDA where they asked me to address exactly these questions. And I pointed out not only studies that are in the literature in PubMed and in various allopathic journals, but I also talked about the mechanisms of action and the idea of people using Ayurvedic drugs as substitutes for pharmaceutical drugs and how that just doesn't work. We have a concept in Ayurveda called Kshetrikarana, which is the preparation of the environment of the body, which is exactly what Dr. Srivats was talking about. When you prepare the body and get it ready, not only does it come back into a robust form where it will toss out the microbes that have infected it that don't need to be there, but it will also reinstate a relationship of different tissues and formational anatomical structures so that things heal. Those kind of paradigms are not unspeakable in English or in modern medical language. What we have are translations which are mistranslations, because at the time when books were translated, they were using the science that was available in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, 70s, like the Bhagwan Das or the P.V. Sharma. And most of the people today, like when people are saying that we need to have randomized clinical studies, there are patient outcome studies. There are at least 50 different designs of studies which don't require placebos, which are accepted by the modern medical community, and which are used by pharmaceuticals, like the sitagliptin study, which was in New England Journal of Medicine 1995, that I use as a model for my PhD thesis in Ayurveda. Because it was a study design that was in New England Journal and therefore acceptable, but didn't disrespect the relationships that Ayurveda has. These kind of things need to be tracked down, utilized, and published. And so, Manoharji, I welcome you to look into these kind of things because they are there in the research. It's just that people are not trained in Ayurveda, especially the MD students today, are not trained to utilize them. I want to thank you for your comment and move to Dr. M. Prasad, who's been waiting to make a comment for some time. Dr. Prasad.
Thank you, Baswati. Thank you. See, I would like to share something like more like a dream for a concrete outcome out of all these dialogues and everything. I know that it is practical, but not sure how far it is practicable, because we want to have something like Rabindranath Tagore's Vishwabharati, an institution where maybe to start with some sort of an informal education can be given, and beyond, of course, it should be open, it should be secular, it should have no discrimination on nationality, race, gender, caste, creed, or nothing like that. Those who are for the pure Ayurveda into the real sense, they can come, stay, they can learn, especially from the very basics, and where the formative period should be as orthodox as possible in the traditional logical way of doing things. And there should be space for everybody to come, maybe lateral entry or whatever it is. And there should be provision for treatment, research of all categories like intradisciplinary or multidisciplinary, cross-disciplinary or transdisciplinary, whatever you call it, and value addition, product development. There will be a clear exit and entry policy. So all these things can be materialized in a single campus, which is informal in its basic nature. Of course, I know that the funding will be an issue, how sustainable such an approach is, but I think only on such a platform we can initiate dialogues. Because right now, the dialogue between Ayurveda and Western medicine is a bilateral issue. It should not be a bilateral issue. It should be a multilateral issue, having interest, multiple stakeholders, multiple interests coming together for a larger cause. But now it is more like a political, like the two countries. Even the UN should not interfere. It is a bilateral issue. We will settle down within ourselves. That should not be the case. So we are badly in need of such an informal institution, which of course the Ayush Valley may be envisaging, I hope, and you people will be taking the lead in all these aspects, I hope, but we are badly in need of such an institution. It's a dream. It's a dream which we are looking forward.
And it's a dream that's happening because the Ayush Valley has exactly that agenda to set up a Silicon Valley. Just as if you think about what the Silicon Valley was in the 1980s, where a few people were getting together and doing things like inventing computers and things that were better interfaces for users, people like Steve Jobs or people who were inventing the next generation of computers and the various softwares and hardwares. So that was Silicon Valley. So in that style, Benny and Dr. Madan and others in the group have envisioned the Ayush Valley to be the next Silicon Valley, but for Ayurveda. And that's a place where everyone has a chance to participate. What we need to do is provide governance so that we don't have people that are militant in the approach of saying, this is the way it's going to be, and I'm going to use my might and my power to shut you down because I think that, for example, my way of doing evidence-based Ayurveda is superior to your way of doing evidence-based Ayurveda, and my way of doing clinical trials is better than your way of doing clinical trials, and my way, my language is better than your language. Those kind of dialogues where we say that there's an orthodox right, and I heard you use the word orthodox, that's very difficult in today's society because, for example, those people who are Brahmin, who believe that knowledge is a meritocracy. If you have it, you learn it, you gain it, you capture it, and if you don't belong anymore. That is the educational system that ranks people and says this group of people pass and this group of people are not good enough. We have that discernment, needed in this society so that we can have licensure and regulation. But there is a place where everyone belongs. And so how do we create a inclusiveness without a hegemony, without a group of people that say that there's only one way? So Leah talked about the idea. Leah, you want to say this? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, because I love the way you say everything.
So Leah talks about the energy. When we can sense energy, And if we talk about energy, then those who get it, we don't have a way of necessarily discriminating against others, but we can see each other. We can see that the other person gets it. That is what person-to-person communication is. That kind of a community that once again exists in that level, that is where the true Ayurvedic practitioners meet each other. When you go to places like World Ayurveda Congress, where you have 6,000 people there, but the ones that really get it know. They know by their energy, the aura, the way in which they behave and the way in which they don't behave. That kind of a community is a level and a language and a variable that no one is talking about. That understanding and that appreciation for what the ancient Indian sciences knew was the vyakt, the avyakt, the respect for energy and prana, and that respect for the teacher that questions the teacher, that absolutely requires research to revalidate. Charak told us, don't accept things blindly. Don't be an idiot and respect things blindly. These books are for people who are stupid, who cannot figure it out by learning from the teacher. That's why these books are here. Please question everything in these books. When we can come back to that place where we don't force people, but we inspire people, I think that's where we're going to move forward. I see Kishore is back on video. Did you want to say something, Kishore?
I just want to respond to that, Vashwati.
Yes,
I loved the way you put it. May I respond for a moment?
Yes, please. And then Kishore.
Yeah. So coming from that yoga perspective, the body is observable. The breath is sensible. The energies moving through us can be experienced. And it speaks to a competency that is unique to Ayurveda and to yoga. I think we've been talking a lot today and around the globe about how we can meet all of modern allopathic medicine and all of ancient medicines. And listening today, I think we have a different starting place between Ayurveda and allopathic medicine. Starts at a different root. And just listening, I just had this impression that I think it's important to insert again that I don't know that we have the same goal. I think the goal in yoga and Ayurveda, which is again to bring health and even joy, balance and wellness to an individual, is very different in many cases than the Western or allopathic goal. Sometimes the problem is that the allopathic goal is just to identify actually the condition so that it can be maintained throughout that person's life. We don't call that treatment. So I think we may actually be able to have better dialogue if we don't assume that we're getting to the same endpoint. We have a very different conclusion of where we want to take people. And I wonder if that will actually help us to sort things out to a certain extent.
I have to respond to that. You know, as a person who did my PhD work in pharmacology and neuroscience first, and then did public health work around the world in many countries, and then went into modern medicine, practiced for 10, 15 years, and then went into Ayurveda, I had a friend who worked at a pharmaceutical company, which I'll only name if you press me. He said that they had done studies where they looked at different concentrations of the chemical at hand. It was an antidepressant. And he said, what we wanted to do was identify the depression and not give the person enough of the chemical that they would be cured of depression. We wanted to step back and get them to the point where they would get some relief so that we could show that it worked. Not give them zero, but just get them to a dose where we could keep them maintained on it so they would get benefit, but not actually be cured. And he actually told me that this is what they were demanded to do because it is the absolute mandate of the pharmaceutical companies to make profit. It is a written legal mandate that they have to maximize profit. So based on that, the scientists were demanded that they had to come out with those doses. So if 100 milligrams would cure and 75 would just keep them doing a little better, that's what they would submit to the FDA. So knowing those kind of stories was one of the things that actually drove me out of practicing modern mainstream medicine for those of you who knew me 20 years ago, that's what I was doing. And to move toward a place where we look at the individual and the idea of healing. And so I offer you that actual story as a way of understanding how the game is so different in the economic capitalistic world versus the ethereal world of healing that we hopefully are talking about, and the group of people in between who are trying to economically establish themselves, as was said by, I think it was Dr. Srivatsa, where there are people who don't mind playing the allopathic game using Ayurveda because they really want to make some money. I know that Kishor wanted to say something because you came on your video. Did you have a comment that you wanted to offer, Kishor?
Yeah, actually, I'm seeing many of the comments which are related to
Yes.
Wikipedia page on Ayurveda. I wanted to make a small comment on that. So actually, we are unnecessarily taking this thing up very seriously. This seriousness is not required, basically, because Wikipedia is a user-created database, or whatever you call it. It is a user-created knowledge, right? A source of information. So we are the ones who edit it. So we have the full right to edit whatever is written. If it is wrong, we are the ones who can write it. So I mean, correct it. So it is unnecessary to make a hue and cry about one particular page. Okay, let it be there. If they have locked the editing, maybe there were some reasons. Anyhow, because we cannot say that entire Wikipedia has got a bias against Ayurveda. It is not so. Because if you open up the Hindi Wikipedia page on Ayurveda, it is excellent. If you open the Kannada Wikipedia page, it is even more better. I mean, it is wonderfully written. So you cannot say that Wikipedia has got some bias against Ayurveda. It is wrong to say. One thing. Second point, what we should do is, we should create more and more Wikipedia pages showing the evidence that Ayurveda works, or something like that. The strengths of Ayurveda. We should create more and more Wikipedia pages to highlight the strengths of Ayurveda using the appropriate references and evidence-based papers, so that one day it will mature itself into a good resource, and then I mean, the readers will decide whether it is pseudoscience or proto-science or whatever science it is. So instead of making hue and cry on one particular page, what we should be doing is, we should work on editing and adding more and more pages on that, and showing the strengths of Ayurveda. This is the one comment that I wanted to make, because these days the Ayurveda page of Wikipedia is there everywhere on all social media platforms, and I think we are giving undue attention to this fact. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that, Kishor. I know that you were involved with that training of Ayurvedic young doctors to teach them how to become editors of Wikipedia so that they can make meaningful changes and entries. And I think that that program should be revived by one of your graduate students as a master's thesis, and to show how using the digital platforms and these tools can actually help young Ayurvedic doctors to feel more empowered and to take up projects that have tangible effects right away. So thank you for that. It's something that would be a great master's thesis. Yes. Is there any other comment that you'd like to make, those of you who are among us as panelists and as discussants? Dr. Prasad, Dr. Srivatsa, Dr. Kapadia, Synthija. Dr. Synthija, did you want to say anything? I like your feisty, brutal honesty. We need it. So it's wonderful to hear this from you.